£100,000, okay? And that's as one human being to another human being, okay? No corporations or anything like that. And when you spent the last pound of it, you realise that I'd given you counterfeit money. And you realise that I'd actually printed it on my little Epson printer, and I'd cut them all out and you know, made them look real. And I have actually got away with this once before, because I printed out, there was one with Tony Blair on. And for a laugh, I went down the local pub, you know, there was like I don't know, bank of whatever, I can't remember. And it actually had, instead of the Queen, it had Tony Blair on it. And I took it around in my local and got a pint, and they put it in the tin. You know, actually, I want it back, you know, I'll swap you for a tenner, yeah. And so, but if I gave you a whole load of counterfeit money, would you pay me back with real money that you had to actually earn when you knew that I've just printed it out? It's crazy, isn't it? No one in their right mind would. But because the whole system is based on counterfeit money, which is absolutely crazy. And you know, there are a lot of people looking at different alternatives now. So yeah, but anyway, there's got to be something of value if you contract. So your contract with a bank is void, because there is no, you know, the basic requirements of a contract, one of them is there has got to be something of value, consideration. And there is no consideration here, because they're creating money on computer screens. Crazy. And the bank never goes broke. Well, you know, with the news, you know, just recently, if the bank now in Monopoly, I don't know if anyone's ever played Monopoly, when the bank has actually run out of money. Do you remember what you do, Debbie? No. No? Does anyone know what in Monopoly, if the bank runs out of money, what do?
You make some more.
You make some more, yeah. You get bits of paper, and it says this, because I've researched this. I've read the rules of Monopoly, and it actually says you get some paper, and you cut it out, and you write, 100, 50, 10, and you give that to the bank, and he uses it like it's real Monopoly money until the bank gets back going again, and then it's like. And then, until the bank is like back on his feet, okay, and then he continues just using the Monopoly money. Well, I mean, as a nation, we've bailed out our banks, I think even more than they have done in America. It's totally crazy. And there you've got a lovely little cartoon there, yeah. What do you mean you need a bailout? And of course, it's not the central banks that go bust. It's the little high street banks that go bust. And that is just it's all controlled. It's all controlled. It's people, and what it is, it just allows the bigger banks to control and buy up the smaller banks. And whether that's the government buying them, because that gets them under the umbrella of control. So it's all this monopoly thing where there's just a few people on the planet that are basically trying to control the world's resources. And there we go, bankers. The house always wins. And the object of the game is to bankrupt all opponents. Okay. Now, on later, if you buy Monopoly now, it doesn't say that. It means you've got to get all the money. But on the earliest, excuse me, you have to edit that out. On the earliest Monopoly games, it actually says the object of the game is to bankrupt all opponents. Now, if there's big companies that are buying up resources, and the same with the game of Monopoly, it ends up that sooner or later all the money ends up in the hands of just a few. So and this is unfortunately, capitalism does this, because the more capital you have, the more capital you can get. And so at the moment, the difference between rich and poor is actually greater than it's ever been. And every single country, every single government that comes along actually makes this wider and wider, because the super rich, I mean, the Times 100 rich list is totally fantasy. Total fantasy. They've got a couple of guys, funny enough, they're Asian guys, they're actually at #1. I can't remember the name of them.
Is it Mattel?
It might be.
Carlos Slim Ailey is at #1.
Yeah. Is that it? Now, what was interesting, I haven't read it for a few years, so I might be out of date on this, but the guys that were up there at number 1, just happened that Rothschild had a big interest in their business. And it was just a piss take. Because you know that the Rothschilds probably own the majority of the resources on the planet. And they're behind the central banks, and there's other big banking. It's not, and the idea that Bill Gates is up there is totally ridiculous. If people knew the amount of money that the bankers actually have, I mean, making a little bit of software, for goodness sake, it's small change, it really is. So if people actually knew the scale that the banks, you know, the amount of money the banks make, there'd be a revolution overnight. Okay, it wouldn't just be those of us in the room here that are sort of saying something's not right. So, and of course you can't go to jail anymore for debts. I don't think you can anyway. I haven't ever been, no one's successfully got me to jail. So, and so just remember that their plan is to take you for everything you've got, and your plan is to stop them. And it is a game. It is a game. And once you start treating it like a game, then you can have some fun with it. I promise you can. And I'll tell you how you're going to do that as well. So you stand a better chance, obviously, if you understand the rules. Now, I've got a website called Get Out Debt Free, and there's lots of other websites as well. So I'm not just going to push my website, although I will be pushing my website. But everything on it is for free. You can make donations, but all the information is for free, because the whole, I don't take advertising on it, and I try and do it sort of honestly and not think, you know, oh, well, I can make a bit of a killing here, you know. So you've got to understand that being in debt, because the way the system is set up, the way they create money out of nothing and then ask for interest on it, it creates debt. Well, the money is created out of debt. The idea that we've got gold and silver backing us, we did have at one time. You know that a pound sterling was actually a pound of sterling silver. A pound in weight of sterling silver. You wouldn't get an ounce of silver for a pound now, would you? It's crazy, crazy. And the government, why would the government be in debt? Because our government can actually create money. So why is the government in debt? It's mad. And does anyone know what actually happened in Iceland? Do you know how many people have lost their houses in Iceland? Anyone?
Zero.
Zero. Who said zero? Yeah? Zero. You know this, yeah? Because what they did, they got a new government in Iceland, and that new government decided to put up, basically put up 2 fingers to the IMF and said, this is corrupt, we are not paying you back. And what they did, they didn't just cancel all the debts, but what they did, those people, well, most people with a mortgage ended up in negative equity because their, you know, the whole, the housing market collapsed. So what they did, they actually remortgaged those people's houses basically on their house value, so that they didn't end up in negative equity. Can you remember in the 80s? Because I know what negative equity was, because I bought a house in the 80s when it was going up, and then the interest rates went up to about 14–15%, and my mortgage doubled, and I lost my house. But what they're doing in Iceland is remortgaging now, because the banks created the housing bubble. Because do you honestly think that houses are worth what they are? You know, it's like people. You know, if you're, they say, so you've got to get on the housing ladder. Well, you're going to jump quite a way. Just get on the bloody ladder, don't you? Trampoline, you know. I mean, it's ridiculous. But this is just like, they say things over and over again, and people believe it. They say, you've got to get on the housing ladder. You know, otherwise you're just going to end up like me, living in a caravan, you know. And, you know, which is fun, yeah. But it's crazy. It's like we're brainwashed almost. But it's so difficult now for people to start off and buy. You know, it's ridiculous. One person can't even, you know, if you're a nurse or a teacher, it's nigh on impossible to buy a house by yourself unless you've got parents or, you know, lend you money, or, you know, it's crazy. The whole system is out of balance. So you've got to realise that the debts can never be paid off. I'm going to talk about the deficit in the second half. Because there's not enough money to pay off all the debts, because it's been created out of thin air with the interest added on. It's not real, it is monopoly money, so it can never be